Hey lovelies, yeah, welcome to Sewwithtia, and in today's tutorial, I'm going to be showing you how to draft a gown front pattern that has a bust and a waist dart. Now this is a step-by-step tutorial. It is super beginners friendly, so let's dive into it without wasting time. So the first thing you need to consider is the amount of pattern paper you're going to need. All you need to do is to divide your largest round measurement between your bust, waist, and hip by 4. Add like 3 inches to it, and that should be enough pattern paper for you to draft in. You should also consider the length. As you can see in my case, I went ahead to join to this pattern paper to get my desired length. So the full length I'm going to be using for this tutorial is 41.5 inches. That is the length of the gown. I'm going to be adding 1 extra inch, that is for hem allowance. Okay, so that will make it 42.5, and 0.5 on the upper part for my shoulder slope, making 43 inches. That is the total I need. So the first thing I'm going to do after doing that is to go ahead to indicate my 0.5 inches from the top of my pattern paper, and I've done that. I'm just going to go ahead to highlight that with a horizontal line. Next, we are going to be imputing our vertical measurements. So the first measurement you'll be imputing is your shoulder to your chest line. In my case, it is 8 inches. After which your shoulder to your bust line. In my case, it is step 10.5. Then your shoulder to your under bust. In my case, it is 13.5 inches. Then your shoulder to your front waist. In my case, it is 15.5 inches, and my shoulder to my hip point, that is 24 inches, which is our hip length. Then you're going to go ahead to indicate your full length measurement, which in my case is 41.5 inches, and my 1 extra inch for hem. Now this is very important. You need to understand how to take these vertical measurements. So probably you're new here and you don't even know how to do that. I have a detailed video talking about how you can take your body measurements. I would suggest you watch that video before even going ahead to start anything in this tutorial. So I'm going to be leaving a link to that video in my description box. When you watch the video, you're going to understand properly what we are doing in terms of those measurements. And I also like to note that whenever you're drafting your gown, okay, you need to always consider the fact that your front length and your back length is not the same. This is because of the presence of the bust in the female body. So that is why we are going to be drafting the front part in this tutorial. In a later tutorial, I'm going to be showing you how to draft the back pattern of a gown. All right, I'm done labeling, and now we're just going to move ahead. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do now is to impute our cross back measurement, which is also known as the shoulder measurement. So what I'm going to do now is to divide my shoulder measurement divided by 2. Okay, so in my case, I'm making use of 15.5 inches for the shoulder measurements, okay, of this pattern. So I'm just going to go ahead to divide that by 2, and at the end of the day, I'm going to be having 7.75. So I'll just go ahead to impute that point on the shoulder line, as you can see. Then I'll go to the chest line. I'll also impute that point. Now I am going to make use of my ruler to connect the 2 points together. Okay, so the next thing you want to do is to impute your neck width. In this case, I'm working with 3 inches for the neck width, and for the neck depth, I'm working with 4 inches. And I'm going to be connecting this using a scoop neckline. You could do any neckline you want. Okay, so on this armhole line, I'm going to go down by 1 inch. Then I connect that point to the neck width to create the shoulder slope. Then you're going to go ahead to measure what you have left on that armhole line, divide it by 2. And remember that this is the front pattern, so we're going to be coming inward by 0.5 inches. Now, after doing that, you're going to go to the chest line, divide your chest line measurements, divide your bust round measurement rather by 4, and impute whatever you have. In my case, I had 9.5, and I connected that point to the midpoint where we came inward on the armhole, then to the shoulder tip. This is to create a perfect curve for the armhole. Now on the waistline, I'm going to be imputing my bust span measurement divided by 2. This is going to help us know where our that point would be, and I'm repeating the same on the bust line and the under bust line, after which I connected using a straight line. I also went to the hip line to indicate that point, and you could see I'm having a perfect straight line. So now on the waistline, I'm going to take half an inch on both sides, okay? Then I'm going to be connecting this in form of a V, okay, to the hip line. All right, and after doing that, from the waistline, I'm going to be connecting in form of an inverted V to the bust line. Okay, so we've been able to shape out our waist that. So the next thing we're going to do now is to shape our gown. So you're going to be dividing your waist round measurement divided by 4. In my case, 30 divided by 4 gives me 7.5. And I'm going to be adding the 1 inch for the waist excess we took, the waist we took. Then on the hip line, my hip round measurement divided by 4. I did not add any extra 1 inch for the dart because the dart is not getting to that point. So after that, I'm going to be connecting this to the waist point and then to the chest line, as you can see. So on the hip line, I made use of 9.5. So on the gown length, the full length, what I'm going to do is, because I'm creating a tapered skirt, which is also known as a pencil skirt, I'm going to be taking 1.5 from that 9.5. Now you could do 1 inch. This depends on how free or how tight you want your gown to be. So I took 1.5 off 9.5 and I went ahead to join those points together using a straight line. So this is what I have. You just go ahead to blend your hip line and your waistline so that you don't have sharp corners and you don't have sharp points when you're sewing. So after now, I'm just going to go ahead to add my sewing allowance. You can do 1 inch, you can do half an inch, you can do 1.5, and you can do 2 inches. So after doing that, I'm just going to go ahead to connect the points together, okay? Just like the original measurements. All right, so after doing this, the next thing I'm going to do now is to take out our bust dart. Remember I said the back length and the front length are different, okay? So the back length in this case is going to be 39, okay? Remember I'm using 40.5 and 41.5 inches. So the back measurement, the back length is going to be 40 inches, sorry. So that means the excess I have is going to be 1.5, and it is that 1.5 I marked on that sewing allowance and I connected it to the bust line point where I have my dart points. I hope you understand what I just explained. So the difference between the back and the front is what you use to draft your bust dart. I hope that is clear enough. So you can see, I told you I have 41.5 for my gown length. That means my back gown length is going to be 40 inches whenever I want to draft. Why? Because the side bust, the bust that is going to be 1.5 inch. So after doing that, I'm just going to go ahead to add sewing allowance to my shoulder slope. That's my shoulder tip rather, that is 0.5. Then I'm going to go ahead to fold my pattern paper on the hemline like so, in order not to have shortage when I'm done sewing. And I'm just going to go ahead to trim out the excess I don't want from this pattern paper. So you could go ahead to fold your bust dart like this in order not to have shortage when you're done cutting your pattern paper. And after doing that, go ahead to trim your neckline, the shoulder tip, and the armhole measurement. So this is what the front pattern looks like. I hope this tutorial is easy enough. This is what the front pattern look like. So in my next video, I'm going to show you how to use this pattern. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.